Alright guys, so today we're talking about M54 engines. There's a common oil usage issue with these engines. So let's get, for instance, it's common if you drive these cars 1,000, 2,000 miles, you have to add a quart of oil to them. Alright? We'll talk about a couple different aspects of this. The first aspect is make sure there's no issues with it. Make sure the PCV or CCV isn't siphoning oil from the engine. Make sure nothing's leaking from the engine to start off with. Now these are common for seeping. They're not really too common for dripping all over your floor or things like that. But you just will notice engine oil just disappeared, right? Usually this is due from piston rings. It could be a little bit of valve seal combination. Usually it's not a terminal issue with the engine though. Engine will keep running for hundreds of thousands of miles. You just have to kind of know what to do. So once you've verified nothing is actually wrong, like I said, the PCV is not siphoning oil out, you're not leaking out the dipstick tube O-ring, you're not dumping oil out the front or rear main seal, and you just notice oil gone. You look at the weight of the oil. Now these engines are known from the factory to require 5W30, right? That's just standard issue. A lot of guys trying to run 0W20, 0W30, don't run that in these engines. This is not that kind of engine at all. These have old school button lifters. They do not need ultra thin oil to flow through the system. The way the Vanel solenoids are in these, they don't need oil that's essentially like water to flow through. So what do I use in these? As a rule of thumb, every M52 TU or M54 engine, M56, etc. To be totally honest, most of these older engines, 10W40 seems to be the magic recipe. Now, you should run synthetic in it at that point in time. Anymore, there's not really a lot of difference money-wise from synthetic to conventional. It's actually easier to find synthetic than conventional oil. So the nice thing about synthetic, it doesn't seem to collect sludge. It doesn't get burned after a while. Especially if you're a little lazy on changing the oil, you definitely need to be using synthetic. It is going to hold up longer and last longer. A lot of you going to say right away, can I use 20W50? I don't think there's any need. 20W50 is some pretty thick stuff. You start using oil that thick, you might have some cold start problems. You might have some issues with that. But I mean premature wear on the bearings. Because when it's very cold outside, it's hard for that 20W50 to get moving through the system, right? So you're essentially starting with no oil for a few seconds until it goes through. It seems like 10W40, no matter where you live, that's a happy medium. That will take one of these cars from using a quart every 1,000 miles down to using a quart every 4,000 or 5,000 miles, every oil change. And you know, a lot of people have different variances of it. Also, if you have some seeping going on, this will usually slow that seep exponentially. Now, just a reminder on these engines, if you have a valve cover leak and it's dripping on the exhaust, what I always say before, it's probably not the valve cover. More than likely, it's probably the valve cover gasket. More than likely, it's the valve cover itself has a crack in it. These engines are notorious for that. M52 is the same way, the single Vanos engine. This all applies to that engine also. M50 even. It's the same engine, just different Vanos stuff bolted on the newer years. And you know, everything here runs 10W40. I think in that 530 I sold, that didn't have 1040 in it. And I need to get a hold of that kid and tell him when he changes that to change it to, not 5W30, 10W40. Change it to 10W40 because that had 5W30. And that car would use, you drive it a lot. Like if I made a bunch of runs to the grocery store and over the span of a few weeks, you have to add a little oil to it. And a lot of that would go away with that. But like everything else, there's so many cars, there's so much stuff to do. I didn't have time to change it after that. I'll definitely shoot him an email though, or a text and tell him to change it to that. And he said he's had to add to it one time since he had it. I told him, look, you have to check stuff on this car. It doesn't like a drop, but you still got to check it, right? Just the way it is. And I recommend you check oil and coolant on every car at least once a week, at least once a week. If you're not, you're doing yourself an injustice. You're rolling the dice. If you acquire a coolant leak or some kind of oil problem and you don't catch it and you get out, you're going to blow it up. It's just not worth it. Hopefully that helps, guys. We'll put a link in the description for the 10W40 oil I use on these engines. That's going to be it. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.